Shri Shuka Uvacha Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Rama Uttama Kalpakai Sarvadevatmayam Devam Ijeta Charyavan Makai Shri Shuka Uvacha Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Rama Uttama Kalpakai Sarvadevamayam Devam Ijeta Charyavan Makai. Shukadeva Goswami said, thereafter the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Ramachandra, accepted an acharya and performed sacrifices, yajnas, with opulent paraphernalia. Thus, he himself worshipped himself, for he is the Supreme Lord of all the demigods. Purport. Sarvarhanam Achuteja. If Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is worshipped, then everyone is worshipped. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:31-14, Yata taror mulam nashechanena tripyanti tatskandha vajo prashaka pranopaharach cha yatendriyanam tataiva sarvahanam achyuteja. As pouring water on the root of a tree nourishes the trunk, branches, twigs, and leaves, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead satisfies the demigods who are part of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Performing yajna involves worshipping the Supreme Lord. Here, the Supreme Lord is worshipped. Here, the Supreme Lord worshipped the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is said, Bhagavan Atmanatmanam Ijje. The Lord worshipped himself by himself. This does not, of course, justify the Mayavada philosophy by which one thinks of himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The jiva, the living entity, is always different from the Supreme Lord. The living entities, Vivinanksha, never become one with the Supreme Lord, although Mayavadis sometimes imitate the Lord's worship of himself. Lord Krishna meditated upon himself every morning as a grahastha, and similarly, Lord Ramachandra performed yajnas to satisfy himself. But this does not mean that an ordinary living being should imitate the Lord by accepting the process of ahangraha upasana. Such unauthorized worship is not recommended herein. I'm going to read the introduction because that's a nice way to begin the chapter. Lord Ramachandra rules the world. This chapter describes how Lord Ramachandra resided in Ayodhya with his younger brothers and performed various sacrifices. Paragraph. Lord Ramachandra, the Supreme Personality of God, had performed various sacrifices by which to worship himself. And at the end of these sacrifices, he gave land to the Hota, Advaryu, Udgata, and Brahma priests. He gave them the eastern, western, northern, and southern directions, respectively. And the balance he gave to the Acharya. Lord Ramachandra's faith in the Brahmanas and affection for his servants was observed by all the Brahmanas, who then offered their prayers to the Lord and returned whatever they had taken from him. They regarded the enlightenment given to them by the Lord within the core of their hearts as a sufficient contribution. Lord Ramachandra subsequently dressed himself like an ordinary person and began wandering within the capital to understand what impression the citizens had of him. By chance, he heard a man talking to his wife, who had gone to another man's house. In the course of rebuking his wife, the man spoke suspiciously of the character of Sita Devi. The Lord immediately returned home, and fearing such rumors, he superficially decided to give up Sita Devi's company. Thus he banished Sita Devi, who was pregnant, to the shelter of Valmiki Muni, where she gave birth to twin sons named Lava and Kusha. In Ayodhya, Lakshmana begot two sons named Angada and Chitraketu. Bharata begot two sons named Taksha and Pushkala. And Shatrughna begot two sons named Subahu and Shrutasena. When Bharata went out to conquer various lands on behalf of the emperor, Lord Ramachandra, he fought many millions of Gandharvas. By killing them in the fight, he acquired immense wealth, which he then brought home. Shatrughna killed a demon named Lavana at Madhuvan, and thus established the capital of Mathura. Meanwhile, Sita Devi placed her two sons in the care of Valmiki Muni and then entered into the earth. Upon hearing of this, Lord Ramachandra was very much aggrieved, and thus he performed sacrifices for 13,000 years. After describing the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra's disappearance and establishing that the Lord appears for his pastimes only, Shukadeva Goswami ends this chapter by describing the results of hearing about the activities of Lord Ramachandra and by describing how the Lord protected his citizens and displayed affection for his brothers. It's a very interesting blend on the one hand and on the other hand. Human-like and not human-like, or not human. Affection for his brothers, human-like. But not human, because the affection for his brothers was not, it looked like, but it wasn't on the material platform. Even to new audiences, Prabhupada would explain the process of meditation, which during his time, TM, Transcendental Meditation, or Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, selling mantras, $35 per mantra, business, so anyway, and it's secret mantra, and people eventually started sharing what their mantra was, and it was the same mantra, or You just bija mantras. In any case, Prabhupada was describing that this is not the process of meditation. Dhyayate. The process of meditation is for Satyayuga. And there's a qualification for meditation. So now we're speaking about transcendence. So how to understand the transcendental nature of Ramachandra's activities when they appear human-like? Well, unless you're on the transcendental platform, you won't be able to understand it. We may have some understanding, but it's a wrong understanding. And it's not a fault, it's just default. Meditation is meant for those who are transcendental. Prabhupada was, taking advantage of the circumstance of the time. Transcendental meditation requires transcendental conception. Or conversely, one cannot be engaged in transcendental meditation without transcendental conception. To have transcendental meditation, there has to be transcendental conception. And how does that's not easy. We know from Bhagavad Gita, Bahunam Janmanamante, many, many lives, by other processes, many, many lives. So it's not just pay $35 and sit however, whenever, in whatever condition, behave, whatever, no restriction. Transcendental meditation, no such thing. It's cheating. It's, maybe a good business, but it's cheating. So the meditation, the worshipping of himself is according to the understanding of the Bhagavatam, but worldly people may not have understood. And those over 13,000 years, 13,000 years, he's doing yajna. So the yajna, each of the 4 ages of cycle of life, or ages of mankind, there's a particular process recommended, and each one of them is transcendental. So in this age, it's maybe not so easy to understand the transcendentalness of kirtan, because it looks like music. And it's music, but it's transcendental music. It's transcendental music that has a transcendental effect, and that's the means of achieving perfection in the age of Kali. And then go back in previous ages and previous ages and previous ages. Temple worship, previous age. Yajna, previous age. Meditation. And it's all the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the purpose is realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the object is the Personality of Godhead. So like offering yajna. The offering is ghee and grains offered into a fire, and the fire is Agni, but Agni is accepting on behalf of. It's not just worshipping fire or worshipping the fire god, because he's doing, Agni is doing, or the fire is the tongue of Vishnu. Swaha is offering to Vishnu, and therefore the benefit goes to everyone and everything, and so if it's done properly. No, what if it's not done properly? And it's not meant for this age, and therefore it may still be done. In ISKCON we also do. But the conception, the consciousness should be, may Krishna be pleased. So supposing someone is not a realized soul, supposing, is Krishna still pleased? Well, the principle is the submission to that process. So when, somebody just asked me, just this morning, is there a scriptural reference for the procedure of yajna and abhishek for Lord Ramachandra? Because Ram Navami is coming. And certainly there must be, but where is it in folio? So I directed the person to the, but when Prabhupada, to the deity worship minister, because there's, for example, the deities in Bombay, and to install the deities and the annual Ram Navami, and other places where there's deities of Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman. Certainly, there's such a procedure. But this particular devotee wanted, a reference for where Prabhupada did. So, the specific folio reference where Prabhupada did is interesting. But whether it's recorded in folio or not recorded in folio, for sure, it's a principle. And because the principle is that the personality of God is to be pleased. So for sure, because in principle it's pleasing. The purpose of the Vedas is to satisfy, put the personality of Godhead, to realize Vishnu, and to satisfy Vishnu. That's how he's realized, by service. So, back to this particular verse for this morning. Here's Ramachandra, and he's performing yajna, which is the means for spiritual perfection, and so he's acting as if he's, a worldly person doing yajna, a worldly king doing yajna. But the transcendental feature is revealed in this verse. He's worshiping himself. And because he is the receiver, Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam. He's the Bhokta of the Yajna. And he's setting an example so that others in his kingdom and of his time could understand how to achieve perfection by the process of yajna, satisfaction of Vishnu, by the same procedure. So they're doing sadhana, and he's at the perfect stage. He's worshiping himself. So then there's imitation people. This is the Ahangra Upasana. I don't know exactly what the procedure is, but they ring a bell and wave an incense stick and worship themselves, or something like that. Because if the conception is, I am Brahman, well, that's what you do. And you take that which is worship, and you worship Brahman. You worship Brahman. But how do you worship Brahman? You worship yourself. And that's not what's being said. It's not what's being encouraged in this verse. Twice in the purport, Prabhupada is saying, it's one should not understand. It was a mistake to understand. Ramachandra, is teaching Mayavad philosophy. You worship yourself. So therefore, what one does, it should not be imitation, following in the footsteps of, but not imitation. And it's a big factor in understanding what's to be done, what's not to be done. We follow in the footsteps, but we don't imitate. And there's so many examples. So many examples. Don't imitate. after coming back yesterday evening, I found an article that was just right in my computer, and I didn't review it before the class, that there's this nice description of an image. Maybe you remember the image of Lord Ramachandra, and there's Ananta Shesha behind him. Remember that one? Okay, so the history behind that image is it's a carving in a temple in South India. And it's in the area where there was the King Bittadev was converted by Ramanujacharya. And the king, he saved he healed his daughter, and then also in the course of association with Ramanujacharya, he became a Vaishnava, and he became initiated Vaishnava, and he was given a Vaishnava name. And then 12,000 scholars from the Jain tradition confronted him. So it's a very nice explanation. You can read it. It should be circulated. You circulated it already? You will. I sent it to you.
Oh, yes, Guru.
You circulated it already. So there's the image at the top of that. It's just a document file, 2-page document file, with the history behind. It's a carving in a temple, because the detail goes something like this. So the otherworldly behavior of one who is as if he's worldly. So there's when the 12,000 Brahmins came to challenge him, he was speaking as if he's a worldly person. Know what to do, basic. And his assistant said, "Now is the time to reveal your divinity." Then so the answer was, "So be it." So he had a curtain arranged, and he assumed a many-headed Anantashesh form, and with those many heads, he argued with the 12,000 followers, and they were defeated. That's how they were defeated. And then on the wall, there was a carving made to commemorate this exhibition of. So I kept saying, there are some of his followers, some Sri Vaishnava followers say he's Anantadev. He's Lord Ananta, incarnation of Lord Ananta. And others say it differently. He's an incarnation of the Shakti of Ananta. And in either case, there's a pastime. At least there's a carving on a wall. It's not exactly a murti, but a carving on a wall commemorating a pastime. We can't go back in history and take a video of did it really happen like that, and what really happened, because over time, it's a fact, over time, history becomes new. Something that never really happened becomes history. So how do we know? And this isn't like a super prominent event in the general biographies of his life, but it's found in this particular temple. There's a carving on a wall or in a wall. So rather than ponder, did it happen or did it not happen? His power was, he was an empowered personality. He couldn't have done. He did what he did because of being empowered. Like, in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada was empowered. Who could do what he did? It wasn't just, he was, but he wasn't just, a jiva, that somehow he got an instruction and he lived the instruction, and there are examples after examples, plural examples, of his exceptional power. I mean, just to go there for a minute, 30 seconds for two different pastimes. One, recently there was a discussion about an event that I recall, but involving Rukmini, who was the Pujari of Radha Govinda for many years in the Brooklyn Temple. And she can't remember that it happened. But then she sent a little message to something that did happen. One day, Prabhupada was coming into the temple room, and he was there before everybody else was there. I forget the circumstance. And she was on the altar, and Prabhupada leaned over to pay obeisances, and a syringe-like gush of water came from his eye, a symptom of ecstasy, and splashed on the floor and splashed her on the altar. And she noticed it. Some others apparently also noticed it. And they quickly went and scooped up the water that came, the expression of ecstasy. But he didn't make any display. Anyway, the platform on which our founder Acharya was situated was unique. There's another example. This is in Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, where Shyamasundar is building the altar for the Soho Street temple, and using his skills, etc., etc. And at a certain point, Prabhupada was present. They were installing the deity, and the columns that held up the altar started to shift, and the whole altar started to fall, and everyone was frozen, and Prabhupada jumped and held up very heavy, an elderly man couldn't do it, but he held it up, until they put the columns in place again. Superhuman power. For the service of Krishna. Superhuman power for the service of Krishna. So he's not Ananta, but he's an empowered jiva. And other examples, and other examples, and other examples. And he was not public about it, but certain devotees were present that understood the empowerment, the transcendentalness of one who was speaking about striving for transcendence, but he was so. Back to this verse this morning. Ramachandra's doing what you do in Treta Yuga, Yagya. And by so doing, all the leaves and twigs and branches become nourished, or all the limbs of the body become nourished by satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, although it was he who was satisfying the Supreme Lord. And then the same giving away in gifts to the priests, the four categories of priests necessary for proper yagyas, and to Acharya. And they were very satisfied with the realization they had given. They gave back the paraphernalia, or the kingdom. This is where people aren't greedy. Pure. Purity is very rare. And the process is to achieve purity, and then purity has its symptoms, and these are some symptoms from his side, from their side. And then all the benefit goes to the citizens. It's just like Ambarish, when he was doing what he was doing, the benefit was to go to the citizens. It's nothing that he needed. And there's other such examples. Ranti Dev, when he was undergoing his fasting and his austerities, the benefit was for the citizens. He was a king. And the king is interested in the welfare of his citizens. A proper king. And that's purity. It's one is not interested in something that goes to me. One is interested in what goes to the object of my devotion or object of love. That's rare, but that's the purpose. And otherwise, something gets stuck. Something goes and something stays. That's the process. That's meant to have nothing stick. It's just everything goes to the Supreme. So that stage of purity or the stage of renunciation is a very elevated stage. And the process is, to get there, you follow the process, not imitate, but follow the example of elevated souls. Or here it's the personality of Godhead. So this is the beginning verse for the chapter. And we discussed the introduction to the chapter, so there's many things coming. And as the personality of Godhead, Ramachandra acted through others. And for example, the whole Ramayana, through others. He gifted a capacity and intelligence and everything to others so they could do. And then he would honor them, but he's the source of their understanding, their ability, and their everything. The same for us. Anything we can do, where does it come from? If we do something nice, where does it come from? And it's just a small smidgen of what nice really is. We should, that's the honesty and humility of a Vaishnava, and that's purity. So nothing sticks. It all goes to the source from which it came. So that's happening here in this little section. See if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the class. My question is, while chanting, the Rupa comes, even though, I'm reciting half of the mantra about Lord Ram, but I never, the Lord Ram Rupa never appear in my chanting, I am able to remember Lord Krishna, Narsimadev, even Prahlad Maharaj, even Guru, everybody, but Lord Ram never, I was not able to remember Lord Ram anytime while I'm chanting. Why is that?
Well, it sounds like you are. The sense of I'm not. Where's the mind going? It's to the object. You're the subject, and there's the object. So, I'm not there yet. Experience is also meditation, and appearing in the sense of I'm not there yet, but the focus is on the object. And to amplify the same point, How many, 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 many examples are there where long periods of sadhana precede the sadhya? So it's in Lord Ramachandra's hand, not yours. You know, purification, testing of determination, you know, continuing to free oneself from contamination, and, you know, so many other explanations. The why is, he has the answer. But, you know, at the same time, the meditation upon the object is the appearance of the object. In the mood of separation from the object. And that intensifies the meditation, or intensifies the absorption.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class. So my question is, when looking at the Goloka chart, we see Vaikuntha, then we see Ayodhya, and then Goloka Vrindavan.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding was the goal is to reach Goloka, but a staunch Rama worshipper who is totally surrendered to Rama, I am assuming will go to Ayodhya Dham.
Yeah.
So, is there a possibility that he can come back to the material world again from there?
No. I mean, possibility if the Lord so desires, but otherwise, no. Purity is purity. There's nothing residual being carried. The answer is no.
But I thought that every soul has to at some point go back to Goloka Vrindavan.
Well, you thought wrong. Vaikuntha is Vaikuntha. Let's take your thought and, you know, develop it. Aside from a worshipper of Ramachandra going to Ayodhya, supposing someone attains Vaikuntha in some place or another, some feature or another, by worshipping one of the Leela avatars or by, you know, full surrender. And they are elevated. You know, the personalities who are elevated. You know, the Brahmana who was worshipping the personality of Godhead, and the Vaikuntha Vimana descended and took him to the spiritual world. You know, the sweet rice. And so, he's in Vaikuntha. And is there a chance for him to return? No. He's in Vaikuntha. There's no residual anything to hold him. Gone. So there's sadhana. He did sadhana, but he also received mercy. So the answer that there's those kinds of examples. The answer is no. There's the unique, you know, Jai and Vijay, the gatekeepers, and that situation is unique. By the Lord's will, but not by the living entity's mistake or misuse of free will. So the presumption, the premise of your doubt is we're all intended to go back to Goloka. So someone that doesn't go to Goloka but goes to Ayodhya or a realm in Vaikuntha, they didn't go to Goloka. So does that mean they're going to fall down, or the potential is there? No. It's the eternal realm. Eternal.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
what if their desire change and now they want to go to Goloka? So do they have to come to material world, or there's a direct ticket?
Well, that's a very, what's the practical application for this question? Tell me.
Just a
Just curiosity.
I think he's referring to Gopakumar. Pastor made this.
Well, whatever he's referring to. Here's Tamal Krishna Maharaj asking Prabhupada. Once one has a realization of one's swarup, is it fixed? And Prabhupada's answer, in the spiritual world, everything is dynamic, not static. Your rasa is, you have an affinity for Krishna to serve the personality guided in this way, in this mood. Then Prabhupada's answer was, the spiritual world is not static, it's dynamic. Now that's a very elevated question. You know, what's the likelihood that we're going to have that problem? But, you know, it's a question of what's the spiritual world made up of. Yes, it's possible, because the spiritual world is not static, it's dynamic. But how would one go from being situated in Vaikuntha to become attracted to and achieve Goloka? It's association. So, supposing, using the Gopakumar example, because it's a realization of Sanatana Goswami, he's, you know, everything, he's in Vaikuntha. But he moved from Vaikuntha to Goloka. But in his case, he had received a mantra that had the potency, the gift in the mantra to attain Krishna and Krishna Loka. That was already with him. So these higher realms of devotion or bhakti are beyond, for most of us, all of us probably, beyond our capacity to enter into the mysteries. However, the principle is, if Krishna so desires, then the impetus to move from Vaikuntha to Goloka, he can arrange. And then the living entity has to say yes instead of no or maybe. Say yes. And if one is fully satisfied, in such and such situation, you know, it's a little bit like Murari Gupta. And he couldn't abandon the lotus feet of Ramachandra. Even he was asked by Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, who he accepted as the personality of Godhead. He couldn't. And Lord Chaitanya was examining him and, you know, honored, you are such a devotee. So even when the Supreme Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself, wants him to go to Krishna Loka, he's not going because of love and attachment in love, not worldly attachment in love. While at the same time accepting Lord Chaitanya as the absolute source of everything. He has an affinity. So, not likely to be a problem.
Okay, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much. There is an online question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Maharaj, for excellent class. We read the article shared on Ramanujacharya
Which one?
and Adi Shesha with 1,000 hoods.
Okay.
And
So you did
respond-
send it. Okay.
Yeah, last year Mataji shared.
Okay.
And responded to Jain scholars.
Yes.
So the question is, can we consider Ramanujacharya similar to Lord Nityananda Avatar?
Well, the article that was circulated, my training is to be very cautious about what you accept as truth. Like, so then it comes, where does it come from? Where does this statement, what's the authority behind this statement? And, you know, I've been a devotee long enough to know there's popular stories that aren't necessarily true. So, the document was circulated because there is a carving on a wall in a temple that's that image, and there's an explanation behind it. But yeah, as you saw, there's two renderings. So I'm a little cautious, more than a little cautious, about responding to this question. Yeah. And in addition, once you start going into who is Ananta, fasten your seatbelt, because there's multiple manifestations of Ananta. And one of those multiple manifestations of Ananta is a jiva, not Vishnu Tattva, but Jiva Tattva. So having been down that path a little bit, I'm a little reluctant to just, give a quick answer to this question. Comparing Ramanujacharya to Lord Nityananda, I'm a little reluctant, more than a little reluctant. Is Ramanujacharya a jiva or not? Is he an empowered jiva? Or is he Ananta? He's the Vishnu Tattva. That's the question. Seems to be, that's the question. There's some similarities, but, in what ways? So I'm a little reluctant sitting here on a, Tuesday morning to say yes or no. Anyone else? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for this session. So Maharaj, there is Ramanujacharya was kicked by Jagannath, Lord Jagannath, from Jagannath Puri. So can you elaborate?
You're asking or telling?
No, can you elaborate on that pastime?
You want me to elaborate? And somebody else can do that, because I'm not familiar with. From last night till this morning, I didn't get a chance to research. But maybe there's a Sri Vaishnava. Do you know the answer to that question? Because of your ancestry being connected to Sri Rangam, you don't know. Would you like the assignment to research this question?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yes?
Yes.
So you can bring the answer to this evening's class. And that's one research I won't have to do today. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Because there was another reference that just was sent. The Muslim lady that was worshipping, not playing, as a toy or as a doll, she was worshipping a deity of the personality of Godhead. Anyway, so then she was a Vaishnava, although she was from a different tradition. She was a Vaishnava. So you can circulate that document for everybody to view. So same, we're just learning. I never had heard that explanation, but somebody knew it and found the document, and I haven't read the document yet. I just chanting japa this morning. Okay,
So I have one more question.
one more.
Yes.
Sure.
So Maharaj, when we serve the deities and offer prasadam, we always have our own reverence and then servitude attitude.
Yes.
But when we read these pastimes, Krishna's pastimes and Ram's pastimes, our relation a little bit,
Gets elevated.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we take it? So
It depends on where your spiritual practice. To move from Vaidhi sadhana bhakti to Raga Nuga sadhana bhakti requires purity, maturity, and following standards and not jumping. And so my recommendation is for you and for others, become more familiar with Rupa Goswami's teachings so that you have an understanding of what the path looks like, and don't just morph, but follow a path. And there's science of bhakti, and there's a path, and there's a procedure that's a part of that path. And it's very elevated, but it's also very natural. So when you find some sentiments or some symptoms like you're just describing, you go to Rupa Goswami, sit at his feet, hear from him, ponder it, and find, probably, I'm not so qualified, I'll stay with where I am and contemplate before jumping. So, whatever. And then the rest of what he writes is a path to follow. There are ISKCON devotees that like to speak on this topic. One of them that does so very carefully, meticulously, and elegantly is Hari Parshad, and several classes, Raganuga Bhakti for followers of Lord Krishna or followers of Lord Chaitanya. And it's an elevated stage. So there's a science to it. But that's the question you're asking. Not exactly, but that's the question. That's the direction of the question. And more refined sentiments than Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, that's the topic. So there's a science. Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
From the sloka, I understood one thing.
From the which?
From this particular sloka, you.
Okay.
Yeah. So Lord Rama was praying himself, means worshipping himself. Does it mean that every jiva is a part of Lord himself, and they should be always involved in worshipping to the God? Are they trying to, is God trying to say that to that shloka?
I'm not clear what your question is. Could you say it again in some other different way?
Yeah, so Lord Rama worshipping himself.
Yes.
Does it mean we as a part of God himself?
As a part of what?
Part of God. God means
He's not a part of God.
as jiva.
What?
Jiva as a
As
jiva.
us.
As us.
Okay, as part of God.
Yeah. So does it mean like the person who are not involved, they should be involved in worshipping God himself?
No. I mean, if I've understood your question correctly, we don't imitate, we follow. So, we're in a different yuga, But we also have procedures where we perform, or under the guidance of qualified brahmanas, because that's what he was doing. He was having qualified brahmanas of the 4 categories perform the yajna, but he was so with qualified brahmanas, we engage in, as jivas, we engage in process of yajna for different functions and different purposes. So we're not worshiping ourselves, but we're worshiping Vishnu and offering into the fire offerings to Vishnu. That's the meaning of swaha, swaha. So it's the personality of Godhead is being honored with the mantras and the procedure and the offerings. So we're honoring the personality of Godhead as a bhakta or jiva that's worshiping the personality of Godhead in ways that are for us authorized, because it's accompanied with mantras. Anyway, and that the procedures and so there's a whole thing. In the time of Ramanujacharya, the time of Ramachandra, excuse me, there was a certain Vaidika procedures to be followed. In our age, it's a different procedure to be followed, or the agamas. It's a technical point, but our process of worship, Narada Pancharatra, etc., these are agamas. They're Vedic. They're as Vedic as the Vedas are Vedic, but it's specific for this age. So following those procedures, we don't do the same as Ramachandra did, but the procedures look somewhat the same. The mantras are appropriate mantras from the agamas, and we follow that. So those who are brahmanas and know these procedures and do appropriately, we're not worshiping ourselves, we're worshiping the personality of Godhead. We're jivas worshiping Vishnu. Now, if I've understood your question, that's the answer to your question. Does that answer your question?
No, I
No.
think I was saying like being a jiva, worshipping God, and we are a part of God, so we should always be involved in God worship.
We should always be?
Involved in God's worship because we are a part of God.
Okay,
Means that was my question.
okay, then sure. But it's not just yajna, it's anything, everything. Live our life, breathe, walk across the floor. It's an activity that, if done in bhakti, that's the connection with the Supreme, through doing what we do for the Supreme. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, probably yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
This one online.
Online, one more.
This is by Sucharita DT, Devidasi Mataji.
Sucharya?
Sucharita.
Okay,
Sucharita.
okay.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, what is the maturity in bhakti to see transition to Raganuga bhakti?
Oh. Become so fixed in Vaidhi bhakti that a natural attraction awakens, just like hunger. How do you become hungry? Well, it happens naturally. So, when Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is done properly, then and Krishna is pleased by that Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, then some hunger or an appetite for an increasingly personal experience. So come to that stage, please. Then you can ask the next questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my obeisances to you. Maharaj, Lord Krishna gave clear instructions in Bhagavad Gita like Sarvadharman Parityagya.
Yes.
And Lord Ram was showing by example how to choose the higher principle.
Yes.
But from what I've seen, there are so much of misinterpretation of Ramayana. The message is so much always it is bound to criticism, and like Prabhu was explaining, some people take the fact that you should follow the word of Father. So there is so much of different explanations, but never the correct one where we have to choose the higher principle. So were there any clear instructions by Lord Ram to Hanuman or anyone where the clear message of Ramayana was given?
A very simple sequence that responds to your question is the analysis of Vibhishan's qualification. And go through that, 100 times, and or even, once very carefully, and the elements are there. And when so that's the starting point, and with the starting point, then the rest can follow the starting point. But if the starting point isn't there, then you're going to get, the multiple interpretations and deviations and distortions, and so that that qualification of Vibhishan was very high, but at the same time very simple. Then further, the extensive, elaborate commentaries of the Sri Vaishnavacharyas breaking down the Sharanya and Sharanagata, the one surrendering and the one who is being surrendered unto. So when there's an alignment with those principles, then the rest follows. And without that, then it's messy. So it's well worth the time it takes to go through that dialogue again and again and again. And Valmiki Ramayana does it so comprehensively. And then, the doubts, the Yabat from Sugriva, and Ram's hearing and very carefully responding.
Thank you.
Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.